let's go over there. We'll wait for this truck. Okay guys, slight bit of a problem there where I pulled up at the park and the jack to the audio on the GoPro got pulled out, and party over for that one. No audio there, so we'll just use this other one, continue on the footage where I got back on the bike and headed back home. So in the park, I clocked in at 147 kilometres on the bike, and I'll just show you that clip there now. So it's 147 k's down on the first ride. So looking at it that side, I'm still really 100% happy with the bike, and the bike's really running well. If you look at positives and negatives, where I mentioned on the other one, I'll just tell you the positive sides of it to start with. So overall, I think at this stage, 100% satisfied with the bike itself. I'm very happy how the bike runs along. I can notice it easily, the difference between riding for the last few years 20 horsepower bikes and jumping on this one, and the way it pulls up on the hills and runs those hills with no trouble whatsoever, even in either top gear or back down to fifth or occasionally fourth, because I don't want to put any strain on the motor in this early stages of its life. So overall it's good in that side. The seat itself, or the stock seat, I'm not having any issues there sitting on it, and I think it's a pretty good seat to sit on. But I'm seriously thinking I might get the high seat too, and the reason why I might get the high seat is these sort of seats you sort of sit in the bike, not on the bike, and I don't know, I think I'd like to get that tall seat just to see what it was like as far as that goes, and see if it's a more pleasant ride with that high seat, or would it be something like what's on the Suzuki SX250, and I'm used to riding that one there, so it's a lot higher than this one, and when I pull up on that one, I'm on the balls of my feet and sort of have no issues. So on this one here, rather than flat foot, I'd be keen to try that one, because I think the high seat's only $200 to buy on one of these, so on these days you can't get much for $200, so it could be a good go there. I found going along the mirrors, these foldable mirrors, although I never touched the setting, very easy to look through and fairly clear. And the best thing I like about this bike is very little to no vibration run through the bars or the pegs, or it does up into 100 kilometres an hour. But I am running the 15-tooth front sprocket. That's the only option on it at the moment. And with that sort of setup, I don't know, no complaints at all. The other side is the instrumentation. I really like that. Big speedo in digital you can look at. And you got your gear selector in case you're wondering or your gear indicator to let you know what gear you're in at the stage. The bike's really stable on the road, even though it was windy when I was going through certain areas of the road, and even with these knock-off Pirelli tyres, they seem to go really well to me. So, overall, so far, like I said, real positive on the ride itself, and no regrets of getting it, and, it's a pretty good-looking bike, and if we call it quits now on the positive side, because you've probably heard it from the last two, this is clip 3, but by all means, if you're interested in subscribing to the channel or give it a thumbs up, by all means, hit that subscribe or thumbs up button or both, and that might help these clips get out to a few other people to look at too. So that's the positive side out of the way, and I've got sort of about 3 negatives I think I could give it, because I like to run these reviews 100% down the gun barrel. So, in other words, a straight review, not a bent, like telling you what you want to hear and what you don't want to hear. So over 150 kilometres travelling, one thing I will address before we get on to that is the exhaust. Now, I've had or not I have, I've heard people say that they don't like the exhaust because it makes too much noise. And, my thought there, compared to going back, 3 years ago when I bought a Suzuki DRZ 400E, that particular bike had the loudest exhaust note I'd ever heard on a stock bike. And I was wondering how on earth that got through. The one on this one, it's loud, but nowhere near like a DRZ. And more importantly, nothing at all to worry about. And I think you can, as I come into the park here, or back there, you could hear it was burbling away. But, really good exhaust note. So no reason to get there and pull it off, and no need to upgrade to a better one. So let's get on to what I think I found after 150 k's, you could say, riding it. So first off, it would be, I found that like the gearbox itself, when you're changing, is more agricultural. Like it sort of reminds me of the old days of a classic 500 compared to the classic 350 reborn with a really up-to-the-date sort of gear change. It just seems a little bit either notchy or, I'd say, aggy. And at times I've noticed when I pulled up, it's not a struggle, but it's you've got to be precise when you're going finding neutral. So if you pull up and you're in first, if you just flick it a little bit too hard, it'll go back into second, and then you'll just have to give it a tap to get it in the neutral. I don't think there's any issues there. I think, after it beds in and something like that, that might work out. So there's no big drama there. So, but the thing I'm going to point out is I did think the gearbox was slightly a bit notchy and noisy as far as that one goes. So that's, like I said, no big deal. But so the next up, that would be one I could pick out. Now, number two would be, we'll hit that clutch. Now, without a doubt, this is the lightest clutch I've ever felt on a motorcycle, and sometimes it's a little bit hard to judge where the take-up is, on it. And my GB350 Honda's got a very light clutch, but I think this one will beat it no trouble, because you could pull this clutch one finger, no trouble whatsoever. Now, a lot of people say, they like clutches and things like that, and, they're probably all right. But, I don't know how long-term, whether or not if you got there and got into heavy sand, bogged or anything like that, whether you'd burn that clutch out quick or not. But I'm only just sort of pointing out to it where, like I've had a lot of bikes over the years, and I should be able to point out a couple of things what may sort of come to mind. So, we've got it there with that sort of clunky, notchy gearbox. I will say about the gearbox while we're back on it, not once did it miss a neutral, not once did it sort of jump out of gear, and or anything like if you were travelling along like the old days in Enfield and you're in gear 5, something went wrong and it jumped out and it threw in the neutral. Nothing like that. So it's probably just a quirk with this particular bike and the gearbox, and, probably no drama whatsoever. With the clutch side, like that may be a little bit different, and, things would only know if I get out and throw some kilometres on it, and then I can get a better idea how things go that way. So, but apart from that, the clutch, changes gears all right, no trouble whatsoever. If it was a very heavy clutch, I might be here saying, the clutch is too heavy and I'd rather a light one. So, it's very hard to win sometimes when you're doing these rides, but I just like to tell it as I see it. Now, those two I class as fairly minor, but the main one I don't like is that notchy or jerky throttle. So it's there all right. And when you're going along and you back off, you'll, especially in the lower gears or first takeoff, you'll get a bit of a shunting effect. Now, I noticed that when I went through on the outskirts of two towns, one town particularly, and then on the outskirts the other, and I noticed then it was doing that bit of a shunting. Now, some people might say, there's a fix out for it now, and just go to the site and upload the firmware and it'll fix it. Unfortunately, that's not the case with this particular bike, because this bike is running the latest firmware. And the guy I bought off back there in Parks, he mentioned to me it uploaded to the latest firmware. And once I got home just to check this, because of the slightly jerkiness and that on it, some people might say, they don't care about jerky throttles, but I really don't like them at all. So, that's a bit of a drama there. So overall, when I got home, I got onto the CFMoto ride, whatever they call it, loaded that onto my phone, went to firmware updates. It told me I was totally up to date and I couldn't do anything with it. So it never said I couldn't do anything with it, but once it says firmware up to date or whatever it said, you can't go any further than that. So I've got the latest firmware, and I don't know what's happened, but there was a fix out earlier on for this jerky throttle, and I don't know whether or not CFMoto might have pulled that one aside now and thinking, like, because of emissions and stuff like that, why they run so lean. It may have been an issue like that, or they might have bumped onto it and then for some reason decided they were going to pull it. But the fact is, there's no way out of it at this stage with this particular bike, because I've got the latest firmware and that's all there is to it. But overall, it does everything well. Like, it's a really smooth bike to ride. Even at this stage, I'd highly recommend buying this bike because it is really a good bike, and any issues there can be easily sorted out. And I'm going to continue on with these clips, and we're going to, I'll get up to 250 Ks and get back and tell you what 100 kilometres above what I like on this one, and a couple of other things I've got planned on it. So hopefully, like I said, if you're here for the first time, or, be all right if you're interested in subscribing to this saga with this one, because my goal is to, and this is the idea of purchase, was to ride this bike 10,000 kilometres for the 10 grand outlay, you could say. Now, I did have one person say to me he wasn't worried about a 10,000 kilometre road or test run. He wants to see what the bike's like over 50. Well, I sort of replied to him that I couldn't help him in that line, because if this is your first trip to the channel, I've got 6 other new bikes apart from this one, and I think the oldest is just 2 years old. So, if I got out there thinking I'm going to do high kilometres just to please one person, the way I look at it now, if I wanted to ride all those bikes, I can only ride this once a week, 4 times a month. If I'm lucky, 40 or 50 times a year. So, I got a chance of doing 10,000 Ks on this, I reckon. And providing everything goes well and it rides up to scratch. And but as far as a high one, well, look, I'd have to be honest with you. If you said to me, do you think you could do 50,000 kilometres on the bike? Someone else probably will, but not me, because, I go through a lot of bikes. It's a simple thing that way. So I could never say, no, I'm going to ride this and get 50,000, because between this bike and 50,000, maybe 10 more bikes or more. So, it's just something that's not going to happen. But I will get out there and give it a good run. And so if anyone comes back and say, oh, yeah, Warro tested one of these and he reckons it was pretty good after such and such, the only way I can do that is get out and put a few kilometres on it, because not many people can take notice of a 150 kilometre test ride, you could call it, even though I bought it. But it's still better than the bloke who goes down to the shop and rides it around the block 10 kilometres and comes back and gives all the reports with it, and mine will be a lot more involved than that. So once again, thanks for tuning in. Take a look. Hope you found this interesting, and after this one, there's going to be a clip 4. Cheers.